podcast. It's yet another Tuesday night, but for this one you determine our chats as you join us for open mic. This is where the mind meets the magic. We dive a little deeper every time. Theme parks, cruise ships and travel. If you don't listen, maybe now it's time. Tonight on the show we open up the door. We will start with some news and chat, and then give the viewers the floor. So join us now for an amazing show as we begin to see what you can do for an open mic night of fun, as we see what topics come from you. Mousecast Podcast is diving in. Join us Tuesday nights for our live show. When we let the mind meet the magic, you find out what you need to know.
Hello and welcome to Mousecast, the podcast where the mind meets the magic. It is open mic night. Yeah, here's Hawk already just getting going. Okay, thanks for watching Mousecast, folks. So thank you so much for being here. It's open mic night, which means you right over there, you're the one that, Matt, not you, them, you set the topic tonight. It's all about what you want to talk about. So when you've got an idea of what you want to talk about, throw it out in the chat, either the Facebook chat or the YouTube chat, depending on which wonderful platform you're watching us on. In the meantime, Hawk, Matt, and Megan, hey, how are you doing? We're back.
Yeah, we are. It's been quite a eventful week in Disney realms.
Yes, it has.
Megan, being in Texas, I know you've had a very eventful and tragic week, so we say
absolutely. We want to extend all of our heartfelt, in all seriousness right now, we'll take a quick Disney pause here. All of our heartfelt and thoughts and prayers go out to all the folks in Texas. Just an incredible tragedy. Megan, it's near and dear to you because it's right there in your neighborhood. So, all of us here thinking about you and all the friends and associates that you have. Who are over there. So, we hope that there is quick recovery for the folks there in Texas.
It's definitely been a long week down here.
Yeah, it absolutely has. So what we need now is some fun, some lighthearted moments here, which again, between Hawk and I, I'm sure the lighthearted's coming with the lawyers probably following along in tow. You know how that goes. But we do have some news going along here, and we talk about some sad things happening at Disney, and a sad moment happened this week at Disney for those of us that are nostalgic. The Liberty Bell had her final run. The Liberty Bell Riverboat is no more. So Disney sent her along with her final lap, and also the WW Railroad also has kind of ceased full operations for a while. It's going to be entering into what they call shuttle mode, which is kind of interesting. Basically, it's going to scoot back and forth between the Main Street station and the what was the old Toontown, now Fantasyland station.
And it was invaded by a new character.
So, when it is running forward, the train goes forward from Fantasyland to Main Street. I think it follows its normal patterns, but then heading backwards, some hijinks apparently happens thanks to our master of hijinks, Experiment 626, otherwise known as Stutz. So, there's a lot of changes. So first and foremost, while we're going here, your guys' thoughts. I mean, we knew this was coming. The Rivers of America is no more, and when you look at the Disney Parks app and the Disney the maps, literally there are no more. You will not see any indication of the Rivers of America, Tom Sawyer Island, or anything. It's just grass and trees now.
So I think one of the weird things for me that this time around, so the last few years have resulted in a lot of change, a lot of new things coming in, and a lot of old things going away or changing. And as we all know, that is part of what Walt's big plan was Disney will always evolve and continue to change. And I think that's a great theory. But I think the outrage these days is almost like a false outrage. Who went to Tom Sawyer's Island? Like I'm being honest here. I have friends that are huge Disney people that haven't been there ever.
Or
I
in years. Yeah.
or it's been once or twice, and even Jen and I took the Liberty Bell because I had never ridden it, and that was a month ago, and I did it to say I did it, and it's been done now, but the outrage on it is kind of getting to a point where people are complaining about this change, but no one ever went there. So it's not like Splash Mountain. There was an argument there. That was one of the most popular attractions at Walt Disney World, extremely popular attraction. And yes, it was one of those things that, you know, there were the potential racial undertones. There was a big agenda. You know, the ride itself, I didn't feel had those undertones. I thought it was very well done. And I think a lot of people did agree with that. The movie itself had some, but it was the timing of when it came out. And history is one of those things that is tough sometimes for people to make decisions on. Personally, I'm one of those people that I think you should always, kind of remember what we had, like have that history there. I think it's important. I think those things are important. But Splash Mountain had more of that positive, people really enjoyed the ride, and then they said, nope, we're going to change everything. This one is one that I'm kind of like, they needed to do something there. Like something needed to be updated, something needed to be brought up. Um, I think it's sad originally that they were going to totally take out the water and the waterfront. I'm glad they decided not to do that. And they did listen to some of the outrage, which goes to speak to the fact that Disney does listen to its fans at some level. They're not going to get the final say, but it makes Imagineers kind of realize things. And anyone that's ever worked in a corporation understands executives make decisions sometimes, and then the rest of the office speaks up as to why it's not a good idea. And suddenly executives are like, oh, we didn't think about this. Maybe we kind of need to meet in the middle. And Disney's fan base really does help to that. So I'm curious to you guys' thought on, how do you see the fan base voice rising in the last couple of years and Imagineers adapting to what some of the fans are calling for? I mean, Villains Land coming to fruition, that's been something that's been talked about for years. It got to the point where people wanted a fifth gate for it. What are some of your thoughts on that? Matt, I'll start with you, like on all of this. I know you never went to Tom Sawyer's Island, but what are your thoughts on the change and what's coming and the voice of the fan base?
So I think it's definitely a needed change. It was basically with this one of those like Carousel of Progress or even kind of like a people mover kind of ride where you just basically get to relax, sit down for a little while, kind of take in like a different like back into the park kind of view. But the island was never busy. I've only I personally never went. So it definitely they could use that space more for like they're using it for a Cars themed land, which I definitely think like people wanted over in Disney World. It's over in Disneyland. People love it. They say it's some of the best attractions in Disneyland. So to have something come over to Disney World finally that's not cookie cutter, which that's a 50-50 toss up. Some people don't want cookie cutter. Some people are just like, take Radiator Springs and just bring it over to Disney World. So that's one of those like, what do you
I've
do
said it
with
before.
that?
If you were ever going to cookie cutter anything, that's the one.
Right.
That's
So as far as like the Disney fans and stuff like that having a voice, once again, it's a 50-50 thing for me. A lot of people complain just to complain. And some people are just like, no, like this change needed to happen, or no, this change shouldn't have happened.
But
And
Matt,
whether
do you
Disney
think
listens or not, it's kind of like you mentioned, Villains Land. Well, I think people wanted more, like you said, a fifth gate versus a land because there's just so much else they could have done with a larger space with all the villains that people are going to want to see in Villains Land and are not going to get in Villains Land, there's going to be more complaints coming that way. They're going to be like, oh, where's Scar or where's Ursula? Like,
But Matt, do you think that the fan base, yes, there's a great percentage of people that want to complain, but there's also a percentage of people that make valid points.
oh yes,
So when it comes to having people jump in and speak up about what's going on, it seems to me Disney is hearing more with the way technology works now and instant gratification, and instant communication as well. They get direct feedback once they make an announcement. And it seems that those announcements have sometimes been altered. Does that make sense? So,
yep.
Megan, what are your thoughts on the way that Disney has chosen to react to some of these things? And what do you think Disney's doing right and where can they improve?
I think a lot of the uproar over the closing of Tom Sawyer's Island, the Liberty Bell, I don't think, again, they're not popular attractions, right? It doesn't have to do with the closing of these attractions. But what it does is it alters the landscape that we've always had at Magic Kingdom. And so I think it's that nostalgia piece that people are complaining about. And so I think that's where, one, Disney didn't back off of closing these things because they know that nobody really cares about Tom Sawyer's Island or riding the boat. I mean, otherwise there would have been lines for those things all the time, and there weren't. So it's not about the attractions, but they've conceded and they're bringing back some of the water. And while that may be a logistic thing and having to do with the land and the building and the capabilities, it may also be, hopefully, to some extent, a recognition that if you got rid of all that water, that's really what people are looking for. The landscape change is what makes the fans nervous. The landscape change is what's throwing the fandom off and what they're really going after and what they're really complaining about. Obviously, there's also been uproar about putting Cars Land where they're putting it and does it fit and how, all of that. So that's also, I think it has more to do with how Cars Land is going to fit in that space and the loss of the water landscape than it ever had to do with Tom Sawyer Island and the Liberty Bell. So I think Disney is smart in that they know that those two things really don't mean a whole lot to the majority of the fandom. Not to say, like you said, there are people that have good points. There are people that will miss those two things for one valid reason or another, but the majority of fans couldn't care less about either one. It's the look, it's the ambiance, it's the aesthetic of the water there that people are nervous about losing, and that's really what they're complaining about. And so Disney is getting rid of two attractions that they know they don't need, but they're conceding, okay, we can give you a little bit of water back. We'll keep a little bit of that. And I appreciate that. What they're getting wrong, I'm worried they're getting Cars Land wrong. That's my biggest fear. I don't feel like they've actually gotten anything wrong so far, except for maybe the plans for what's next. That's the only thing I think might be the potential issue here.
Well, I think one of the points, and I'm going to go to Chuck on this because I really want to hear your thoughts on this, is the actual, like to Mark's point, the actual closing of Tom Sawyer's Island made it real for people. So I think the fans react once it becomes real, obviously. Because, Muppets was very similar. Say what you will about the Muppets, there were not people lining up to go into Muppets 3D. You can say whatever you want. And at the end of the day, I think Disney has realized you want the attractions that people are going to be lining up to go experience. And if you don't have that, you're better off closing what you have and opening something new that's going to create a want. Rise of the Resistance is now a reasonable wait most days to get in and experience Rise. It's a great experience.
But there's still a wait.
No, but there's still a wait. But it was almost like, like Hagrid's was uncontrollable for a long time. You were having to commit to 2 hours to get into an experience. I think that was happening at Disney with certain things. But then when you have things like Muppets that people don't want to go do, or Tom Sawyer, those are potential lines where people would be tied up waiting that would shorten other lines. So I'm curious to your thoughts, Chuck, on one.
Yeah, so there's a couple of points that are going on here, and Chris brings up a point earlier that he said, one thing I hate about Tom Sawyer Island going away, as I've stated before, is it's basically losing some of Walt Disney's original vision and touch, and as he says, that's what makes it sad for me. And there's some truth to that, but let's also look at another piece of this, and I'm going to go back actually to Splash Mountain for a second, because it all is the same thing, and that's relevance. For the Disney audience, and let's just face it, who is Walt Disney World's target audience? It is not me. It is not any one of us here. Okay, it is that teenager or less. You can make all the faces all you want, Hawk, but that's the reality. It's there for kids. Kids had no idea what Song of the South was, what Brer Rabbit was, or any of that. Relevance, none, gone.
You make a good point with that.
Same story in Tom Sawyer Island. If I asked to any kid that was there and said, hey, that thing over there is called Tom Sawyer Island. Do you know who Tom Sawyer is? Odds are they would have no idea, even if they did read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, only because they were forced to read it in, 7th, 8th, 9th, whatever, 7th grade, somewhere in there. I'm trying to remember when I read it as a kid.
Been a hot minute since they've had that one in the curriculum.
Been a little while. But it's the whole point is relevance. And, to look at Muppets, the Muppets was the most, by far, the most relevant of all the various intellectual properties we're talking about right now. And even then, it didn't have the demand that I think justified the use of such valuable real estate. I say that, though, we know that we've got some very valuable real estate over in Hollywood Studios with Star Wars Launch Bay that needs to be redone, but that's a conversation for another story.
Things don't seem to get popular right now until they're told they're going away. And it's like the final hurrah for a lot of these things becomes a big event. But
go back to Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. I mean, there was a reason that Disney took out Mr. Toad's Wild Ride in the Magic Kingdom. There's a reason that Disney took out Horizons in Epcot. They are legendary, almost dare I call them cult favorites. But that's just because they're gone. They weren't getting the usage. I mean, that's the reality.
And to your point, too, Disney makes revenue on merch as well. And Brer Rabbit plushies weren't running out the door.
Exactly. Back to relevance. Kids had no idea who Song of the South was or anything like that. They know who Tiana is, and especially because they are working now to cross-pollinate and put some more of Tiana into Disney Plus and all these other things to add and enhance the relevance of those characters. In fact, Mark says, what do you think might be next on the reimagined list? I fear for Carousel of Progress and Journey into Imagination. What do you get worried about? For those two, I would probably say that Journey is higher on the list than Carousel of Progress. Carousel of Progress still gets half decent crowds, especially during peak times.
It's the best place to take an air-conditioned nap on Disney property.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Numbers are numbers are numbers, though. Okay, let's just call it for what it is. It does move the turnstiles. So
does Journey, though.
It does, but I think Journey is probably primed for more of a redo. As long as they keep Figment, do you hear me? You will. Okay, you will keep Figment, but I think Journey is primed for much more of a redo than Carousel of Progress, using these two particular bits that Mark has talked about.
So let's step away from these two particular bits and let's go around the horn on what everyone feels might be that targeted reimagined list.
Now, are we talking Spaces Attraction or anything and everything?
Oh my gosh, Mr. Chuck, you need
because that gets different answers.
Chuck, take anything on Disney World property.
All right, anything and everything. Okay,
is the reimagined list, but let's all go around and pick one or two things that we think.
Hey, folks at home as well. Mark's here, Tom's here, Chris is here. You as well. Share out in the chat, and we'll call them up as you guys do it.
And there's a big difference between a refurbishment and a reimagining. So, I want to clarify. I'm talking the reimagine list. Like we're
Yeah.
gonna take an experience, we're gonna recreate it, and it's gonna be different. It's gonna be a different thing. We're not refurbing a ride that's in desperate.
Right. So for those of you who are longtime Mousecasters, you'll remember our show, actually shows plural, that we did of what would Walt do? Would he keep it? Would he change it, or would he scrap it? We're talking about scrapping here.
Well, what we're talking about is reimagining something, and it doesn't necessarily mean because, for example, Test Track just reopened with its third iteration. So, like, it's a new experience of the same ride. So that is still a reimagining of the ride.
Fair
You're
point.
not necessarily wiping something out. But what do you think? So everybody pick out one thing.
Well, Mark Jones already says he thinks the lawnmowers, I think he means the Tomorrowland Speedway, needs to be reimagined. So, all right, what do you guys think?
It just needs to be electrified or refueled because that stench is awful on 100-degree days.
I'm going to actually disagree with you. I think it needs to be scrapped completely and not just reimagined, but all new space. It takes up so much real estate in a prime area. I think you could reuse it in so much a better way.
Kids experience, though, the first time a kid gets to drive a car, I will tell you, I understand your point, Chuck, but I remember going back to like childhood theme parks. And the first time you get to drive one of those little cars on the track at 4, 5, 6 years old, you just think you are the man.
Oh, I don't disagree with you because, I mean, forget about 5, 6 years old. I took my boys, they were just down here over spring break, and they're 20-some years old.
All right,
and
so
on, Tomorrowland Speedway. So,
we're
they
gonna
love it
get
too.
sidetracked, but I'm going to start with Matt. Give me something that you feel, oh, come on, Matt. You got an imagination. You give me something you need reimagined at Walt Disney World.
See, a lot of the things that I would do, Disney's already talked about taking care of.
It can be something getting taken care of. Like, don't be afraid of that. But what do you feel currently? It can be something that's already been announced. It can be something you're most excited about. But what are the things you feel in the park need direct attention at being reimagined right now? Give me one thing.
I think what they're getting rid of Bugs Life and the Tree of Life, and they're doing Zootopia. I think that's a huge improvement. Something that's been long overdue because, once again, who's really paid attention to the Bugs Life movie? I remember when it first came out and I was a kid. Like, kids nowadays, unless you go out of your way to see it, they're just like, oh, it's Bugs. And, okay, great. But now if you watch Zootopia...
So getting that more relevant is a big step for you.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly, because it's something now, and Zootopia 2 is coming out, and I mean, at least for my kids, they love Zootopia.
So to Chuck's point, it's relevant, it's a good change, you approve.
Yep.
Okay. Megan, what would you reimagine if you had to pull anything out of the parks?
I'm going to go with relevance as well, and I'm going to pick on Tony's Town Square here. I think it needs to be rethemed, first of all, because Lady and the Tramp, there are no character meet and greets. There are no movies coming out. They're not we know who they are. They're classic characters, but the theming is not relevant to current, what's hot. The menu also could probably use some work. It's one of the more divisive restaurants on property. Now, that being said, you don't obviously want to change too much of the outside look of anything on Main Street. So, you have to be careful about what you pick to retheme in there, because I think it's got to work with the outside of that building. But I would love to see Tony's kind of gutted from the inside out and restart that with a new, reimagined theme over one of the newer, more relevant series with characters and whatnot. Mickey's Meet and Greet is right there. Something even with the classic with the Fab Five would be great, I think.
To be honest, I think you take that one step further and you actually make it Chef Mickey's and truly, but do Chef Mickey's with actually good food, please. And then you can take that space in the contemporary and use that for something more thematically appropriate for the contemporary. But maybe literally move Chef Mickey's and of course fix the menu.
The only caveat to that that I think is a potential issue is it puts it inside the park and removes that accessibility to that restaurant if you don't have park tickets. And I think that's one of the great things that Disney does is having those character experiences for the people that maybe just can afford a couple nights at a Disney hotel and not go to the parks.
Well, it doesn't have to be a character meet and greet. You can just let it be part of Mickey's Toontown and tie it into the meet and greet that's already there, but let it just be that's its atmosphere is Chef Mickey literally as the chef, and that's your theme. Then you can do something else in the contemporary with a meet and greet. But anyway, so
what would you do, Chuck?
Let me talk about Tom has a great bit that I wanted to bring up here first. He says, turn the laugh floor, the Monsters, Inc. laugh floor in the Magic Kingdom, into the Muppet Show using live technology to have the Muppets interact with the audience. I wanted to highlight that because I love that idea. I think that, once again, we're dealing with relevance, and that fits better. I love the laugh floor. Don't get me wrong. I like the idea of the laugh floor, but I think that idea of the laugh floor can go to Hollywood Studios, where it's going to be basically put that where the old Muppets was. Basically let Muppets and laugh floor flip.
No, what they should do, in my opinion, and where they missed the boat and jumped a little early, is you're building Villains Land, right? The Villains Show just debuted at Hollywood Studios. That should have been the Muppets laugh floor right there, because you're retheming the Rock and Roller Coaster ride to the Muppets. You recreate a Muppets part of Hollywood Studios.
That's not a bad idea.
The Muppets. They could have done a temporary Villains Show, if you wanted, at Magic Kingdom, and you either use the old Stitch's Great Escape, that venue, or you take Laugh Floor out and put the Villains Show in there. Either way, it would have been more relevant to keep the parks. This is the one thing to me that I feel Disney is really missing right now, is they're just kind of throwing things out and trying to make themselves relevant, but they've proceeded to ruin the continuity that made the park so successful. Mm-hmm. And when we've talked about Epic, their portal concept has made the theming 100% immersive in those areas going to
everything has story. And remember that everything in Disney is supposed to go back to story, and you're correct in the fact that I think by throwing the darts out there and they're just landing on the dartboard wherever, we're starting to maybe miss that story continuity that you're talking about, where Epic absolutely has story continuity from portal to portal to portal. There's a story the whole way through, and it's a cohesive story.
Star Wars has 3 separate locations in Hollywood Studios now. You walk out of Star Wars, and then you walk by the Muppets, and then you go back into Star Wars, and then you walk through Toy Story Land, and then you get back to Star Wars. The journey is really just kind of getting lost in trying to fill and make relevant areas. And, that was my big problem with bringing Indiana Jones to Animal Kingdom.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Either take the show from Hollywood Studios and move it to AK and do a whole themed area with Indiana Jones, but stop putting these movies in this park and that park and this park and create themed lands again. The one thing Universal did get right with Epic, is the continuity factor. And even as you shift into other places, it stays in the theme that you're in that area, in that moment. And I think that is a super important factor that Disney, for some reason, has kind of stepped away from. And they were the pioneers of it. And that's what I think is so interesting, is the CEO and the decision-making and the Imagineers may not even be on par with some of the things that they're being told to do. And it's just taking away, to your point, from the story. It's like this convoluted, oh, look, there's Donald there and there's Chewie 10 feet away. Like it's just not matching up the right way. You lose that immersion. And I think that immersive experience is one of the things that, especially for young kids, it makes it real for them, and you're taking that possibility away, making it this sporadic.
Yeah, Mark Jones has a couple of great comments that he says. First, he says that's a great idea, referencing your thought of moving the Muppet Show down to where the current villain show is. He says that's a great idea. A Muppets mini land. You could tie it into the Hollywood Tower, kind of an off Hollywood theater that fits the Muppet theme. And then he says make that area a little bit run down, like a has-been area of Hollywood that fits kind of the rundown theaters that typically the Muppets play in the movies. And now you have a whole theme and you have a story, because you've got that little Muppets corner where things are a little bit off, but then, just down the street, there's this other place where things are really off, and you can hear the screams and all that from the Tower of Terror. So, Mark brings up two great ideas about, to kind of create a little Muppets mini land, and I think that's a brilliant idea.
Okay, so what would be your spot?
Well, I keep going back, and it's the idea of real estate again. That there are pieces of real estate that just aren't being used very well, and we already talked about Launch Bay, but frankly, I'm going to go even bigger. And there's an entire pavilion in Epcot, and that's the Wonders of Life Pavilion. Did you know it was there, folks? Hey, there's this space between Guardians of the Galaxy and Mission Space. There's this whole big yellowish, kind of goldish dome. That's the Wonders of Life Pavilion that hasn't been open for decades. Decades. We're talking 20 years or more that Wonders of Life has not been open, and it only gets used sporadically for different things, maybe a flower and garden festival little event or a food and wine or whatever. They need to
who stays in there, right?
Go ahead.
The big guy that steals the little thing out of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh yeah, well there you go. That's where Galactus,
The very
not Galactus,
large man.
Yeah.
He actually resides in there. That's
there you go. So
very large
it's
apartment.
Galactus that's there. But what they need to do is utilize that space. Now, how, I'm not sure, and where the theme is, I'm not sure, but I'm going there. The other piece that Disney is missing that, again, Universal has done so brilliantly, and they did it well, correction, they started it at Universal Studios. They didn't do it at Islands of Adventure, but then they started it at Universal Studios and then brought it to Islands of Adventure and then plussed it way up when Epic came on board. What am I talking about? But the Harry Potter interactive wand experience. Now, obviously, you would not do a Harry Potter interactive wand experience, but it is that concept of allowing guests to literally play with the environment that they are in. We don't have that same concept at Disney. We had a little bit with Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom. We had a little bit with this Adventureland, scavenger hunt kind of thing. But really, it's not there. But yet, it's something that I think that particular interactivity is a draw for people to go to Universal. They'll go just for those wand experiences.
Well, and they may, I think that's true, but where will
the vloggers go for special events? That's right.
If you read,
they'll actually have to do some work, Mark. It's okay.
But I mean, they had the hunts at Epcot, and the scavenger hunts and Phineas and Ferb,
and it's still there. It's now as DuckTales, but
it's DuckTales now, and they've reimagined it a couple times. There's been a couple of iterations of that. For me, I think getting something into. I'm frustrated, like you, at the real estate that already exists that isn't being modified or utilized. And instead they're building out or up or, making these drastic changes when there's still places that you could spread the crowd in Tomorrowland by repurposing Stitch's old experience. Like that's another potential.
The shortest attraction in the history of Walt Disney World.
That's another potential rider experience, show, meet and greet, whatever, but put something in there. Take that space and utilize it. And every park seems to have some kind of space along those lines where it's just not being used to its fullest capacity. The other thing I think they have to do is it is time to reimagine a nighttime experience at Animal Kingdom and get one right. Like
Here,
that.
here.
And if you're going to open up the whole world, pavilion area back where dinosaur is for the Americas and cultural experiences, how fun would that be to come up with some kind of nighttime show that ties into that as a musical dance projection, just a fun experience. The potential is there. I hope they seize it and grab it and do something, because we've talked many times that area and that park at night is just a unique, different experience that people would stay if there was a quality nighttime show. If enough rides stayed open late enough, I understand you're going to lose the safari. They have to put the animals away.
You'll lose the safari and you're going to lose the trails.
But you can keep running Expedition Everest. If you're going to have new experiences in that new land with at least two new attractions. So you're going to have Avatar, you could keep going easily, and that is probably the highlight of beauty at night in that park. So there are things you could keep going. The shopping in that park I honestly think they have some of the best merch of any park.
Oh, by far, because it's unique. It is not the cookie cutter stuff. Yeah.
But it's not only is it not cookie cutter, but it just seems to be more quality. Like, I'll be honest, they have some great quality stuff. Jen and I we collect mugs. Our favorite place to buy mugs is Animal Kingdom. They have some of the coolest stuff. And to your point, it is unique, but it's also very good quality. So I think they need to kind of do some of that stuff.
I still agree, and I think they need to find a way to incorporate some elements of a World of Color like thing. I know there is the cavalcade, the boat cavalcade. I think they can figure out how to make the two coexist in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I'm sure
they could figure it out. Mark brings up another point. He says Tomorrowland has needed a reimagine since 1972. That whole area lacks theme and storytelling. I think what it lacks is a cohesive story. Again, it's piecemeal. We got Stitch over here. We got this over here. It needs a cohesive story. And Chris says he is down for a nighttime attraction at Animal Kingdom. And I'm with you, Chris.
Mark.
I think Animal Kingdom is ripe for evening events that give Disney a reason to keep Animal Kingdom open later at night. Yes, you lose the animals. I get it. That's fine. It almost becomes a whole second concept park after dark.
Go
I
ahead,
was thinking the same thing about a second concept. We talked, I don't know, last episode before that about park hopping or not park hopping. My family park hops because we want a different experience, a different park from morning to the evening. But if Animal Kingdom stayed open later, you have two different parks, because during the day you've got it's animal centric and the animals are there, and at night it transforms into something completely different. And I love that idea.
Well, and here's the other part with Animal Kingdom. Remember, the original Animal Kingdom was not just the animals of reality, it was also the animals of fantasy. If you go back to the old Animal Kingdom logo, it has a dragon in there. It has unicorns in it. You could tie into that whole extra
Universal
side of Animal Kingdom.
That,
they did, but
But to your point, and Megan, you bring a great point with this. They used to do the after hours experience when they started doing that. They did it in Animal Kingdom, and it was amazing. That park was so quiet, you could walk on to Flight of Passage. We did it 13 times in a row one night at one of those events. Well, that was a little much. I don't suggest anybody doing that, but you could just do so much stuff. But to Mark's point, they might as well rebrand Tomorrowland as Yesterdayland. It really is dated. And, Tron brought a new edge to it. However, Tron's an 80s movie that, you're bringing modern technology to a movie that's still dated. Even with the reiteration of it, the newer movie, it's still dated. The ride itself is new, but, to Chuck's point with the Speedway, with Buzz Lightyear, you're going back decades for these movies that are being referenced. And I think it could use a very serious updating, and it would be nice to see a refurb of modernization come to Space Mountain, for example. Like, even if you're doing some of the layovers, what's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, the overlays that they do, like Ghost Galaxy and all that.
But they do Hyperspace Mountain in Disneyland. Some of those things are amazingly fun. You start slapping in, a little Star Wars or something into Space Mountain. Again, you're jumping outside the park, but Disney seems to like doing it. So,
Well, and so part of the reason, because I've actually had read some stuff with Imagineers that at Disneyland, because again, remember, Disneyland is essentially a locals park. That's why they do the overlays. That's why they do holiday overlays for Haunted Mansion, for Small World, for Space Mountain, for all these things, because it refreshes the park and gives the locals reasons to come back. The reason that Disney does not do this at Walt Disney World is because that park, that whole area, is geared more towards that one-time, first-time or second-timer experiences. So they don't want to change the Haunted Mansion or Space Mountain because they want it to be what it's supposed to be for that.
Except for the fact, Chuck, that doesn't really hold true anymore.
I'm just telling you that was the thought process. I'm not agreeing with it.
It's so rare that when we're visiting a park now, that we meet people that are there for the very first time. Like, even the first visit pins, pay attention as you walk around the park. It's maybe one out of every 200 or 300 people you see. It is not.
I completely agree with you. I think that yeah.
It's a once in a lifetime trip for a lot of families. I understand and I get that. But I think you still need to be able in this day and age to provide a modern day experience. No one wants to go to a Brady Bunch theme park from 1972. They want new technology. They want to be wowed. People go to Cedar Point and these other places for thrills and updates and what's the new coaster this year. People are flocking to Epic right now at numbers to the point where Epic's actually suffering because it's not getting the reviews, because the lines are so long and there's so many people in there that people aren't having the best experience. And that's sad because that park is literally amazing. So there are people that get things wrong. I think this was a good chat on this, but I am curious, like, this is an open mic night, so throw some ideas out there if you have them.
Yeah, if you guys are watching right now, what else? Other topics we want to talk. So Matt, let me get with you. So you're a person that you go about every couple of years or so. If Disney were to start adopting holiday and special event overlays into things like Space Mountain, the Haunted Mansion, Small World, all these kind of things. If you started to see more holiday overlays, aside from just the Jingle Cruise, which pretty much is the only holiday overlay they do to an attraction, just about.
They do them on all the Halloween parties and Christmas parties.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
separately ticketed events. What Disneyland does the overlay for the crowd.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, for that whole crowd. Matt, do you think that would entice you to go more frequently if they had those seasonal changes?
Not really, because the ride doesn't really change. It's just the overlay. For me personally, I've been so many times that the ride. I mean, like the Jingle Cruise, you might get like some different jokes. I've never done the Jingle Cruise. I've never been down maybe once for Christmas time ish. So most of the time we go down for Halloween in October and stuff like that. So
so you don't really, the reality though, you don't really know because you haven't really felt.
Well, that too, but it's like, so even just if it was my first time, like if it was, hey, I've never gone for a Christmas party or the Christmas, feeling of it.
Because I will tell you, when they black out Space Mountain and crank the music and put in the strobe lights, that is one of the coolest experiences. Like at those parties, it is totally different. It really does change the game. So I
You wouldn't
understand.
see me on Space Mountain, so you don't have to worry about that.
Well, we know that.
We all know that.
Let me tip my cap to you, son.
Wrong
Touche,
example.
we know that one. But I think, this is one of those things that, some people would tell you it is a totally different experience. It's, Chuck and I have had the conversation about Velocicoaster. I remember the first time I rode Velocicoaster in the daylight versus at night, and the difference is drastic. Tegan and I once rode it at night, and we were the only people on the whole ride, and we don't scream. So it was dead quiet. And you could hear the squeaking on the wheels going over the hills. And I was like, this is the craziest experience I've ever had. So even a ride that you do regularly, if they change it with an overlay or you get a unique opportunity on it, it definitely does change the experience.
It does, and it's funny because we're talking about experiences here, and Chris has a great topic that he just threw out here. He says, "All right, folks, what are some of your Disney traditions? These are things you absolutely have to do, must-dos on each visit to the parks." We're going to pull out an old Stacyism for those who remember Stacy's and the Disney must-dos. If you ever watched WDW Resort TV while you were at your resort. The must-dos of Disney. So, okay, Megan, we'll start with you. One or two of your must-dos. Every trip, this is a must-do.
So my mom was a cast member at Magic Kingdom back in the first summer it was open, which would have been summer of 72. And she was a cast member at Columbia Harbor House. She loathes Small World because she heard that music all of the time during the summer she worked there. So it is tradition to drag her on there, and every time we go and she's there, or if she's not there, we call her while we're on the ride and we just blast the music to her every single time. It's tradition. We love it. She complains. We used to threaten to spread her ashes in there, and then Disney started kicking people out of the park for doing that, so we don't talk about that anymore.
Your mom and I are already arranging me to visit and crash your next trip. Because I'm telling you right now, I would love hanging out with your mom. Your mom already cracks me up.
Oh boy!
We're gonna get some. We're gonna team up and we're gonna get some revenge on you for this Small
Megan,
World.
I'm so sorry, Megan. I'm
There's
sorry.
going to be a whole episode about Hawk Does Disney with my family next year after we get there in April.
Yeah, the episode is called Megan Never Wants to See or Hear from Hawk Ever Again, and here's why.
No, I've actually already experienced Disney with Megan, and we had a blast.
We've had fun.
Great time.
We've all had fun. All right, so Matt, what do you think? What's one tradition must do at Disney?
I'm trying to think because we like to kind of not do it all, but I really don't know. I don't know if we really have something. I mean, I like to collect pins, so I usually try to collect, get a few new pins every time we go.
Do you have a first thing you do when you get, so for example, we used to announce we were officially in Florida, when we walked out of MCO and took that first breath of humidity into your face and we were like, it's official, we're home. You know what I mean? So do you have that kind of when you get off the plane or when you get on the bus or anything? Is there a first step of your trip that this is when it's real? This is when we're here. Do you have that?
No. It's just kind of just get off the plane and just kind of go. It's depending on when we land, where are we going? What are we going to do? It can change. It could be as simple as just going to the resort and relaxing, or maybe we go to Disney Springs. But there's nothing that we consistently do every time as a tradition in a way.
Okay. All right, Hawk, what about you? We'll get to Tom's in just a second here.
Yeah. See, I want to touch on Tom's because this is kind of funny. What do you do when you have a week of horrible weather? Well, one, Tom, you get wet.
Yeah, you do.
You go out and you experience the park. But one thing I will say Disney does very well, and a lot of people get nervous about monsoons or even hurricanes or anything else. some of the most magical memories I've heard from friends and cast members, as well as, our own on one occasion, being at Disney during a hurricane. They literally go bonkers out of their way to make sure that you experience the best possible thing you can. So they'll bring characters to the hotel. They often bring food. They'll put out snacks. They have games. They keep your kids entertained, even if you're locked down in the hotel due to extreme weather. So if you ever had to endure a hurricane and you're stuck at Disney, I honestly think that's the best place you could be. They have incredible safety. They have incredible, rescue response ready and available if, God forbid, anything happens. But I'd rather be there than home alone in my house or home with my family, relying on, you're with other families. You're able to connect and unite and go through things together. Mark, I love that Space Mountain being the last ride on the last day and usually as late as possible. That's awesome.
Yep.
For me, we have two traditions. One, max whatever credit card we brought down for that dang trip because we're going to live it up. That's number one. Number two, and my fiance has taught me that is not the case when you live here, by the way. I just want to clarify that. Jen and I barely spend any money at Disney when we
That's
go.
because Hawk has got his nuptials coming up very, very soon, and he wants to actually remain married after that. So
yeah, but being fair, when we used to come down, if we got the opportunity to come here, we made the most of it. And I don't mean that in a irresponsible way, but I mean it that we didn't cut corners once we were at Disney. We really enjoyed it. And if it took me a while to work off that trip afterwards, I was okay with that. But realistically, our tradition sadly is no more. My daughter and I always counted the bear butts at Splash Mountain. And when she was very, very little, she looked up on the first time we rode it and she's like, Dad, there's a bear butt. And it became kind of a little joke for us. And we counted the bear butts all the way through the ride. And we did that every time. And when Splash Mountain closed, that was a very nostalgic part of our past that was very hard to kind of accept. So I am one of the sticklers that is very disappointed it's gone. That, Mark, is an amazing experience if you've never done that. It's both. They were
Tom wants a clarification, please.
They were bear butts. I guess it would not Care Bear butts, bear butts. But
Megan's trying to keep it together right now.
You're taking a turn here.
Yeah, a little bit.
So we were actually the last guest at a Christmas party due to a cast member that was a photographer named Taylor, who now actually works over at Epic Universe. She was a CP doing PhotoPass, and she met Tegan and I, and she said, come back after the final parade and come back and see me. And we went back, and she did one of the most memorable photo shoots we have of Tegan at Magic Kingdom, because she walked her to all these places where we were the only people left in the park. And we have pictures of Tegan laying out in front of Walt's statue. We have pictures of her, by the fountains, by the castle. We had brought her Elf on the Shelf. So we have the Elf on the Shelf picture, with it down there with her at Disney. We just made some magical memories. If you ever have the opportunity to be the very last guest coming out of the park, I highly recommend it. However, do not give the cast members a hard time when they start to tell you it's time to go. Just start to walk out. They will push you out politely. We walked out with security as they walked us down the way. And we talked to them about what they enjoy most about their job and what they don't like most about their job.
And I'll echo that to all parks. I did the same thing, but I did it over at Islands of Adventure. Correction, not Islands of Adventure. Universal Studios Orlando, walking out, and I was literally the last group coming out of Diagon Alley, and getting those evening sunset right over, and getting the last dragon puff of fire and all of that. And the security were great. They said, okay, everybody's waiting for this shot. There were about 10 of us, and they were wonderful. And we just talked with them. It was an enjoyable time. So, do that. Please honor, and when they're saying, okay, it's time, so that's great, and just talk with them. It's a great opportunity to strike up a conversation
and
with them as well.
And they also bring you to light on some tips and tricks on how to better enhance your experience.
Mm-hmm.
They'll teach you about the park itself or the history, show you things. I used to love the cast members showing us the Easter eggs at each ride or each attraction. And those of you that, don't understand what an Easter egg is, ask a cast member. And they will almost every ride at Disney or Universal has some kind of hidden Easter egg.
Oh, all over the place.
It's either a tribute to an old ride or possibly something that was there before what you're seeing it was built. It may not be an attraction. It may just be something that was there before. Sometimes it's just a nod to the movie or to the thing. There's a couple in Snow White's in the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train that there's a baby rattle hidden in the roller coaster, because one of the Imagineers that worked on it literally had a baby while they were building that ride, and they put a baby rattle up above in tribute to his child being born. There's a cricket that's in there. It's actually, I think they put a grasshopper in, but there was a cricket that used to rub its legs together and drive the workers crazy while they were building and screech all the time. And it was so annoying, they put a cricket up there to remind them of it. So you ask cast members, and sometimes the cast members don't even know. Sometimes you can teach them once you know these things. And that's how the legend continues, and people continue to learn. So
absolutely.
Really,
in fact, Haunted Mansion, classic example, all of those tombstones, every single one of them is a tribute to an Imagineer or some other Disney person. Every single tombstone is a tribute in some way, shape, or form. And then, of course, there are the windows on Main Street, which, you talk about tributes. You can't ask for a better tribute than a window on Main Street. And Mark, you're exactly right. You can identify very quickly, he says, the cast members who are working a job and those, meaning cast members, who have a love for the parks. And there are a lot of cast members that do have a love for the parks. Are there some that are just doing a job? Yes, of course there are. But you find a true park loving cast member, and they love to share their stories, as Mark says. And so Chris also says, my favorite Easter egg is the tornado in Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. I believe it's where the Wizard of Oz scene in the Great Movie Ride was, and I believe you're correct. And it's a tribute, a not so subtle tribute to the Great Movie Ride, which of course Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway ultimately replaced. One of my go-tos, and it's become a tradition, is Rose and Crown and the Sticky Toffee Pudding. I mean, just every trip we make it a point. We're going to Rose and Crown and we're enjoying Sticky Toffee Pudding. Even if it's just my wife and I, even if it's just Mickey and I, we're going and we're doing Sticky Toffee Pudding.
My husband and I are that way about Sanaa and the bread service.
Yeah. We may pay for it afterwards because, it's good, but it's rich. But, we're going to Rose and Crown.
So does anybody have a first park that they go to every trip, no matter what?
9 times out of 10, it's funny. It's actually Hollywood Studios for us most of the time. And it just kind of happens that way. A lot of times we are staying at a resort in the general Epcot area, be it, Yacht, Beach, Pop, even, kind of the All-Stars or whatever like that. We're generally towards that Epcot side. And so, we end up, for some reason, we're always starting at Hollywood Studios. I think it also comes back to our very first trip in 2007, where that was back during Star Wars weekends, when there actually were Star Wars weekends. I wish they were back, but that's another story. And we started at Hollywood Studios, and that was the beginning of everything. Was that first June of 2007, and the floodgates literally opened when it came to the Disney fandom right then and there. Yeah, Mark says I ruined that for our upcoming trip by going to AK for our first day. Mark Jones and I may be spending some time here at Disney coming up in a couple of weeks. And Mark, we can always change that perhaps, but you got to talk to some other people about that. I didn't set that schedule. Chris says his favorite tradition is breakfast at Topolino's Terrace. Especially if Hawk is there and paying for it. All the characters have such adorable outfits, especially Minnie in her poet dress. Plus, the food and ambiance is so amazing. And Hawk, I know that's obviously one of your favorite spots.
I love that place, but it is getting to the point where the price is getting tough to say yes to. I'll be honest. We love their food, but $50 a person for breakfast is getting a little steep. So that'll be a very special treat location for us moving forward, but it's definitely not. When they first started, it was mid 30s for breakfast per person. Now it's up over 50. It's just too much for a breakfast. It's tough. Yeah, Chris is right. Chris and I have done Beaches and Cream a couple of times. But we have not been able to coordinate for a meal at Topolino's, but someday.
Yeah. So but that's part of, and again, this is the benefit of open mic night, where we've talked about a lot of different topics tonight, and we encourage you to continue the conversation. Go out on our Facebook page. Go out, continue the conversation even in the chat. On our YouTube page as well. Share out, and if you're listening as well, as Tom says, his absolute go-to meal is the Sci-Fi Dine-In. The food could be better, but he loves the theming. And I'll tell you what, on the Sci-Fi Dine-In, and I'll kind of do last comments here, I think it's time, you go back to what's a retheming. I think the Sci-Fi Dine-In is one that is primed for a retheming, and I want it to be rethemed to Mickey Shorts. I want classic and current, kind of mix it all up, but there's so many great Mickey shorts and Disney shorts that are there that just don't get the airplay. I think you turn that into
Mickey
a
shorts. I would give you the animated Disney.
Oh, all of them, all the shorts,
yeah,
the silly symphonies, the Pixar shorts, Donald Duck, all of the. There's so many great shorts that are out there that you could do. Tom says, "Heck no!" He wants his old 1950s monster movies. He wants the what is it? The Curse of the 50-Foot Tall Woman or whatever it was that was over there.
So as we get ready to wrap, I am curious with all the projects in the works, and just real quick, one thing with all the projects in the works, with the things that are coming up this month, keep it all in mind. But what is Disney's current project that you look forward to most out of everything that's been announced in the last couple of years? And Megan, I'll go to you first, and then we'll kind of run around. Matt, you'll be second. Chuck, and then I'll go. But what are you looking forward to most?
I feel like for me, the easy answer is Villains Land. I don't know that I'm looking forward to. It's more just anticipation of what is it? Is it going to be any good? I think the one that most intrigues me is the Indiana Jones piece over at Animal Kingdom, and what the heck this is going to be, and I think that actually is the one for me, because I just have no idea what they're thinking here. But I adore Indiana Jones. I'm willing to be open-minded to it. I do wish it was in the same park as the show.
You and Mark have a lot in common, because Mark is saying,
there we go,
followed closely by Indiana Jones.
Great minds.
What about you, Matt?
So I'm going to stay in Animal Kingdom, and I'm interested to see how they do the Americas piece, where they announce some Encanto stuff going in that same area. Why they're throwing Indiana Jones in there is beyond me. But I think they can kind of expand on the Encanto kind of concept over there. But I want to see what they do with that area, because there's a lot to Encanto that I think they can really make that land special again compared to what it was.
The potential is there for sure. I hope they don't disappoint.
Yeah, speaking of taking advantage of real estate that really could be better, more effective, yes.
All right, Chuck, what's your thought?
I'm actually, a lot of folks, Megan and Matt and all have talked about things that are down the road. I'm actually looking very short term. I'm looking forward to Disney Starlight. That is opening up in less than 2 weeks. There's a lot of things that are coming down the pike, but I'm looking forward to something that's getting ready to launch here. Disney and especially the Magic Kingdom has needed a good nighttime parade for quite a while now. I was a huge fan of Spectro. I always loved Main Street Electrical Parade, but I really like Spectro, and I have high hopes that Starlight will be on par with a Spectro Magic. So I'm looking forward to Disney Starlight.
So for me, believe it or not, it's the Monsters coaster. I can't wait to see the Monsters Inc. coaster. I just think a suspended launch coaster for Disney, I am so excited to see what they do with it. And, I really hope it puts a little thrill in it and they level up a little bit. I was super excited.
Have you seen the loading area? I think that's a level up in and among itself. I mean, that animation, wow.
But as we have spoken about, animation for Disney doesn't always match reality. And
right. Let's hope it stays that way.
Universal's been very good at the last couple of years. So if Disney can put their money where their art is, I think they could be doing some amazing stuff. And I'm super excited for that launch coaster. I hope there's some thrill to it, though. I really hope Disney starts to bring a little more thrill to what they bring to the table. Not with every experience, but with that one in particular. When you're building coasters, I think you need to bring some thrill in, because even the Disney fans want a little more thrill. It's been spoken about. It's been public knowledge. Mm-hmm. Hopefully they step it up a little bit. I was hoping that for Tron and was disappointed.
Well, we know that, folks, our guests stepped it up tonight for Open Mic Night. We've had a lot of great topics to talk about, but don't forget, you can always be part of the conversation. We are live every Tuesday night here on our Facebook channel and also on our YouTube channel, 8:30 p.m. every Tuesday night. Don't forget that the last Tuesday of every night is game night, so be sure to come out and play along. Hey, help us out also. If you've been enjoying Mousecast and you've been watching us, either you're joining us live or you've been listening to us via our recorded podcasts or watching our videos after the fact, share out the fact that you have been enjoying and watching and you're part of the Mousecast community. We'd love to grow and have more folks join us for each of our shows so that we have more voices that can join in the conversation and be together where we all are at the place where the mind meets the magic. This has been episode 80. It's the return of Open Mic Night. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday night live at 8:30. Until next time, we'll see you.
Mousecast Podcast thanks you for listening to our show. When you let the mind meet the magic, it's where the deep thoughts flow. This is where the mind meets the magic. We dive a little deeper every time. Theme parks, cruise ships, and travel. If you don't listen, maybe now it's time. Tonight was an amazing open mic night. Our viewers brought their best. We all love the chat and the fun. Mousecast listeners be all